Hi guys, I'm so happy to be able to do this interview for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and read out the questions and then answer them. Question number 1. How come you decided to start writing? Was it something you'd always wanted, or did this urge come out of some personal experience? It was more like an urge. I started writing around when my son was, I think it was in kindergarten, and I was waiting for him outside to finish, and I opened an app on my phone and I just started writing. So I think it just came out of nowhere. Question 2. Do you think that writing such powerful books and creating so intense characters can be somehow cathartic for you, even though I know how it drains you while you're writing them down, and for your readers? It is draining. I think I've spoken about it before, how, some authors, they hear voices and they go from there. Whereas it's almost as though they possess me, if that makes sense. So yeah, it can be very, very draining. 3. You've said that the main character in Flip Trick has a lot to do with who you are. Does she represent you more than other female characters, or do you put something that belongs to you in any of your heroines? Do you draw inspiration from anybody real to develop your characters, both female and male, or do they simply jump out of your fantasy? Amethyst in Flip Trick is it didn't happen that way. I didn't draw inspiration or anything like that. It's just, while I was writing her, I think it just come out as that way. Like, there was a part of her that I resonated with a lot, especially when I was younger. The tomboy and the girly girl, that's always been me. So yeah, and I don't really draw inspiration from real people. People ask me that all the time too, by the way. I don't draw inspiration from real people. It's a really strange experience, but as soon as I open that first page on a book, it sort of just flows out, and I have zero control over it. Question 4. Do you always keep your characters in check? Do you always keep your characters in check, or how they behave and what they do? Or do they get out of control sometimes and impose themselves on the plot you had in mind? It is very safe to say that I have no control over my characters or the plot or anything like that. They have complete control over the pages. I'm there just to put everything down. I wish I had more control over them, because I think that there's some times where I would probably change a lot of things, and I try to change them. With Malum 1 and 2 in my Elite King series, I tried to take that story a whole different route. And what happened was, because I did try to fight them on that one, I'd write a different route, but then the words would always circle back to that original plot. So these characters, they have full control over everything. Question 5. Did you ever really truly fall in love with one of your characters, and did you ever happen to wish you were one of your heroines? If so, would you act the same way, or would you or take a different path? I fall in love with every character that I write while I'm writing them. I think what happens is, every time I'm writing a character, they become my favorite. So every time I'm writing something, I'm like, oh my god, these ones are my favorite. And then I talk about it and people are like, no, you can't say that. So yeah, I have a lot of, I love them all. Question 6. I know you really care for women's rights. For the record, it's one of the reasons why you're really proud of your books in our catalogue. And your female characters turn out to be often much stronger than they appear at the beginning of the book, and definitely tougher than most men. Do you believe that romance books can be a source of inspiration and give strength to women and young girls? Absolutely. I think that, especially with me personally, as I've gone on over the years, I've found that leaving breadcrumbs in my books whether they're subtle or whether they're loud, I like to leave breadcrumbs in my books to give strength to women. Like I'm not saying, look, I've got men that read my books too, and I leave things in there for them as well, but I'm a very staunch feminist, and I will always stand for women's rights. So yeah, and I think it's important for young girls, especially for me as a mom. I have 2 daughters. You know, I get often asked, are you going to allow your kids to read your books? Of course I am. Absolutely. They can read it whenever they're ready. So yeah. You love brain-wrecking plot twists, and let me tell you that is something you're very good at. Do you have the storyline in mind since the beginning of the book, or do you figure it out while you're writing? I figure it out while I'm writing. I have been a pantster all of my writing career, though just recently I've started to outline chapter per chapter, which I have to admit has become very good for me, for my art wise. It's become easier for me to keep track of all the twists and turns and everything like that, so I don't have a lot of work to do during the first draft edits, but those all come to me. They just come to me as they happen. Yeah, and I'm about as shocked as you are as you're reading them, so yeah, it's sort of bittersweet. What's your idea of fiction and romance? More specifically, while creating a world in your books, do you stick to situations that might turn out to be real or at least plausible? Or do you believe that literary fiction allows to cross the borders of reality and introduce some unrealistic books? I definitely think that I like to push the borders where it comes to fictional and reality. I think I love fiction for that reason. I love having that escapism where you can open a book and you can step through to another dimension. So I definitely like to push the borders personally when I write in fiction with romance. I think romance comes in all different shapes and sizes. You know, there's romance in everything. I think there's love in everything. And when it comes to writing fiction, I definitely like to keep most of it real, but I do like to balance on the line of just make-believe. Like, the one thing that I will say is that, you know, with my characters, there's never like a switch that they're like, oh my god, I love this person, you know, and I don't think if I have, it would be, you know, I've forgotten. I don't think I've written a book where it's like, boom, oh yeah, I love this person. Or if I have, that would have been an older book. But as I've gone on, I've realized that I don't think there is really a defining moment when you think that you love someone. I think it just happens. And that's one of the things that I've put into my books now as well, is it grows, I think. Yeah. What are the elements that cannot be missing in your books? What do you enjoy reading, or what makes you close a book immediately? Oh. I like to read books that are not similar to my own, especially if I'm writing if I'm writing a specific like dark. I don't read dark anymore, and I think people find that interesting because I write dark. It's just, I think there's so much happening in my head when it comes to dark romance that I like to. That's enough that that's all I can cope with. But if I do need a dark fix, I usually go paranormal or fantasy. I love paranormal and fantasy books. I think they're my favorite. And I also like new adult romance as well. But again, I don't read books that are dark or any similar to mine, just to keep my own worlds fresh in my head. And what makes me close a book? I used to have more time to read books, so I'd open a book and I would always finish it. I would never DNF a book. But as I've gotten older and as my schedule's been becomes, chaotic. I've found that I just don't have time to read a book that I'm not feeling within the first couple chapters. So I usually, I stop reading a book. But I never speak about it and I never talk about it because, why? What are the elements that cannot, I've already done that one. 10. Are there any topics that are taboo to you and that you'll never feel like dealing with in your books? No. I think that if a story comes to me and a subject is raised and there's something there that I want to talk about or that character wants to talk about, then I will talk about it. I don't think there's any subject off or that I wouldn't touch. The one thing that's very important to me, especially because I'm Indigenous and I'm Māori, so I think the one thing that's important to me is that if I touch any subject, I research it. I need to know everything about everything before I, start writing a subject about something that I initially just didn't really know anything about. So if that ever happens, then yeah, I'll touch a subject, but it will definitely be heavily researched and all sorts of other stuff. Let's go deeper into the books that will soon release in Italy. Let's start with Sicko. How did you come up with the idea of this book? The start of that book was actually a part of an anthology that released a couple years ago. So when I initially wrote the first 3-4 chapters that were in that anthology, I was planning to take that story a different route. But obviously it didn't turn out that way. As the same with Sicko as with all my books, I have no control over what happened. I sort of was just in there for the ride. Jade and Royce just took me to places that I was not expecting to be taken to. I thoroughly loved it though. Royce and Jade will always have a very special place in my heart. What makes Royce so irresistible and forgivable according to you? Why would a woman choose and trust somebody like him, by the way, instead of following a smoother emotional path? Okay, I think I speak for Jade. There's love in recklessness, and because Royce is so volatile and explosive and it doesn't help that he's sexy. I think that some women are drawn to that, and it just so happens that Jade was one of those women, and I would personally be one of those women too. And I think that with Royce as well, like he puts a lot of passion into what he does and how he feels about people, so and I think every girl would like to be loved that fiercely by and by their partner or whoever it is. So yeah, I think some girls just don't like the smooth path. I think some of us just like the rocky road. 13, which leads us straight to another question. Why do you think some women prefer villains over Prince Charming? What elements make them far more appealing, even though a woman might have to face danger, emotional, or even physical pain? Do you believe it has to do with our ancestral white knight syndrome, or a woman drawn by something else? I think when it comes to villains, and I think I've spoken about this before, there's something about a man that would just... I've actually written a line in Sancta Diaboli Part 2. You give a villain something worth dying for, and he will tear the world apart just to hear her breath one more time. And I think her heartbeat one more time. I don't know where breath came from. Feel free to edit that out. So I think when it comes to villains and heroes, personally, this is for me, and I don't know, I can't speak for other women, but I think it's the fact that villains don't have boundaries when it comes to getting what they want, or when it comes to the love that they have for their woman or their man. Yeah, and I think that that's what's most appealing to us, is that they will do whatever they have to do. They will do whatever they have to do. It doesn't matter what it looks like to anyone else, to make sure that that person is safe or cared for, you know. I personally love villains. I relate to villains a lot more than I do heroes. I actually call my men villains instead of a hero, because they're all a little twisted and dark and villainous and whatnot. Question 14. Though I wouldn't define Sicko as strictly forbidden romance, why do you think the forbidden element is so alluring? And what do you define as dark? I think there are different brands of dark, you know, and I think with my brand, with my dark, it's more twisty and psychological. Then it's, you know, dark, and I think that there's definitely different kinds of darks that you can get. That's not just one. I don't think dark is just one genre. I think there's many different kinds of darks. The forbidden element is alluring because I think it's alluring because, you know, again, you get to experience something that you may not have experienced before, and it's just it's like that escapism. It's just taking you out of your mind and into somebody else's story, and you're experiencing it, you know, firsthand. And dark is, you know, I think dark is comforting. Well, for me, I can't speak for everyone else. Jade is one of the strongest characters I've ever read of. She pretends to be weak while hides a resilience and a strength that made me root for her till the very last page. Thanks for creating such a badass. Have you ever met a woman in your life just as bold and generous? I have met many bold and generous women in my life, but my mum is definitely the strongest. She always stands for what's, you know, what she thinks is right, and even if, you know, she'll sit in a crowded room, and if nobody agrees with her, she'll still stand staunch, and, you know, I have to respect that, even if I don't always agree with some of the stuff that she does, or says, or whatever, you know. So yeah, I think every woman that I surround myself with, my friends, my author colleagues, you know, all of them, the people I surround myself with, they all have strength and, you know, resilience, and yeah, they've all got that sort of, that characteristic in them. They're all very, you know, so I think everyone has that in them eventually. I think, you know, the world is a hard place to live, and I think not just women but men as well, they, you know, every walk is hard, I think, and whether we see it or we don't, I think, yeah, some people may have it harder or whatnot, but it doesn't mean that everyone hasn't had a smooth walk. So, do you ever happen to think of Jade and Royce every now and then, and to wonder what they're doing or how they're feeling? Does it happen to you with any of your characters once they've come to life through your pages? If so, does this give you the right inspiration to start writing the next book of What Might Come series to Wicked? Yes. So I actually, for just shits and giggles, during COVID, I wrote a quarantine scene for my readers in my Wolfpack group on Facebook, with the Elite Kings, and I wrote them all in quarantine with everyone, and yeah, that was quite funny. I cannot wait for Wicked. I can definitely say that. I'm still feeling out his woman. I still don't have my creative claws in her yet. She's been very distant. But yeah, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to start him. At the beginning of Sicko, You've added a trigger warning that's quite unusual in your books. Why did you feel like alerting your readers, and why for this book? Did it have a higher emotional impact on you than your previous books? What makes Sicko so unique among your already unique books? I think with Sicko, I put that trigger warning at the front. I've done it before. I've done it with Malum as well. But I usually do it when I feel like there's something in here that, you know, that will upset people. I've always said that my name should be your trigger warning. I've always stood by that over the years. You know, I said it, I think when I first started writing, I said, look, if you're gonna pick up an Amo Jones book, that's a trigger. But it was actually one of my beta readers who, she read it through it, and she, you know, she said, look, you're gonna need to put a trigger on this story. After she had finished it, she told me, because I didn't initially have a trigger warning on it, and you know, we all went back and forth about it until I finally agreed that it did need to have a trigger warning on it. There was, you know, I don't ever want my readers to feel blindsided. Like, yes, they know that I'm a dark author and I write dark books, but I also sometimes write light books like Flip Trick. It's my lightest book, you know. So I don't always write dark. So I don't want them to feel blindsided when they open a page, and especially because nothing is off for me. If I want to speak about something, I'm going to speak about it, and I don't ever want them to, you know, some women have triggers for different things, and I don't want them to not try this book just in case there's something that they might get slapped in the face with. I personally have, you know, I have some triggers of my own, though I have written through them in some of my books. It's still, you know, I just never want to put my readers in that position, ever. I keep asking questions to get to know you and on, but I think these questions might give our readers a chance to have a better idea of who you are and how you build your stories. I think we'll leave a few more questions. I'm not making fun of that. No, you're just thank you for having me.